You might wonder how blind people deal with everyday challenges. Well, normally the answer is simple. We're not that different from you. We play music. We go to school. We go to work. You get the picture. But sometimes the simplest things can be difficult, and we need a pair of eyes.
Connect to.
First available helper.
That's where you come in.
Establishing video connection.
Through your smartphone, Be My Eyes connects the blind with sighted people through a live video connection. Simply choose if you need help or want to help by the click of a button.
That's a nice picture of you and your family, Caroline. Is it for a present? Yes, it's a photo from my parents.
You can help just by installing the Be My Eyes app,
Gripped image.
and we'll notify you when someone needs your help. And if you're in the middle of something, don't worry. Someone else will step in.
That dog is way too old.
So, would you care to be my eyes?
Until midnight, this is Perth Tonight with Chris Ilsley on 882 6PR.
From a studio in East Perth to a man wearing a Hawaiian shirt in nerd heaven, we say good evening to Ben Aylett, benaylett.com, 1L, 2 T's and Aylett.
G'day, Chris. G'day, listeners.
How are you, mate? What's new? Oh, look at this. Oh, he's just popped up with a new computer.
Oh, yeah, it's the same computer.
He's in nerd heaven.
Oh,
What
yeah,
have you
I like
done?
it. Well, I had to go and replace the old Lenovo, and I was in a bit of a rush, and I saw this Alienware 13-inch gaming laptop, and it was out on clearance as an absolute steal. I knew it was a steal because when I asked the sales guy about it, he wasn't too pleased when I asked it. I said, that I wanted to
it
buy
was one of those ones. It was they'll never keep it on the down low. They'll never ask, and you did.
Bury this on the clearance table. No one will notice, and I'll be able to take it home later on. And so, yeah, I snapped this thing up, and it's a
Another
great
way of
little
screwing
laptop.
the salesman, Ben. They never appreciate it.
So I did my best. I bought a few accessories and things just to try and keep him happy because I
What's
could
that
tell he was
program you're
displeased.
running that's just making you so happy?
Okay, the program I'm running, this is what I use for my streaming when I'm streaming from the studios live to my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So it's called OBS, or Open Broadcaster Software.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, you're currently doing this to YouTube,
This very second.
to LinkedIn,
Yep.
and to Facebook.
Yeah, so the links are there. So Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and also Instagram. So you can catch me on all those. I did post a link to those social media streams. So if you want to catch the video, what it looks like inside the studios, we get down and do the tech thing, you can do that. You can follow the link and away you go.
Well, one of the things about this is Even if what you're doing doesn't add up to much, it looks so damned impressive. You know what I mean? It's like one of those fancy European cars. You think, are they a bit overrated? Maybe they are, but they just look so good.
Yeah, it does look good. So I've got this program, and I found a new mode which gives me sort of the TV station type feel about it. So I've got all the camera feeds and all the different break feeds that I've got lined up, and I've got my preview and my live program feed, and it's great.
By the way, if you'd like to have a chat to Ben, 922 11882. Our friend Darko in Greenwood's got a bit of a problem.
Oh dear, what's up?
He said, I have a problem on YouTube app, Apple TV 4K, trying to stream the live Al Jazeera Balkans on it, but it's buffering 24/7. Wow. Al Jazeera English is streaming live in HD, no problem, including Euronews live channels and others on other devices.
Okay.
I've contacted Optus and had made reset to the Huawei router. Maybe the Chinese don't like Al Jazeera, mate. And the Apple TV on the whole Wi-Fi network, and Al Jazeera Balkans is streaming live of all other devices, but still continues to buffer 24/7 on the Apple TV. Even AirPlay works. Optus told me from Tower. I'm not sure what you mean there, Darko.
I think I know what's going on here.
Yeah,
okay.
and their side of the connection for the internet is fine. I've even contacted Al Jazeera English and Google about this problem, but Al Jazeera had answered they will look at the problem and thanked me for commenting on the content. But Google just auto-reply, good luck finding a human being there. I have been running iOS 11.4.1 firmware on Apple TV, same firmware on iPad 6 and the iPhone 6S. Windows 7 professional computer. Just today I discovered that my TP-Link extender Archer C7 needs a firmware upgrade. During setup, this is one of those ones I'm waiting for something to explode shortly. During setup for 2G, had chosen channel 1, and for Apple TV 4K channel 48 for 5G had selected. That is what TP-Link Support Live Chat had recommended, but had done that reset and set up and restart on every device. And now LAN cables from the TP-Link female and male extenders that go to the Optus Wireless 4G router. Jesus, I hope you know what we're talking about here, Ben.
I should have taken notes. I'm kind of lost. Carry on.
Why isn't this bloody TV working?
All right, well, I think it comes down to a couple of key things that we've said here. So he says that everything's streaming fine in high definition, or 1080p. And it only seems to buffer when it's 4K. Okay. So
that's as I draw it too.
So it looks like we have a bandwidth problem, as in he doesn't have enough bandwidth to support 4K without.
But he says it's only happening on one of the 4K channels. On the other one, in this case Al Jazeera English, that's fine. On Al Jazeera Balkans, it sucks.
All right. It could. Let's see. So speed is determined by the slowest link between 2 points. Okay,
a bit like the speed of the advancing army.
Exactly. Or the weakest link in the chain. So it's only as strong as its weakest link or slowest hop. So it looks like that Balkans Al Jazeera have got some sort of a substandard feed, or it's going through a different service, because Al Jazeera is more than just one news agency.
It's a multiple set of news agencies.
Exactly. So a multiple set of news agencies, and they'd be under different conditions. So Al Jazeera English, obviously because they'd have a massive, massive audience, would be putting all of their resources into that particular branch of Al Jazeera. Then there's Al Jazeera Balkans, which would be subject, they'd probably be broadcasting out of Balkans, I'd imagine, and they'd be using Balkans-type internet, which may not be up to scratch. So it's just as simple as that. I would suggest news in 4K probably is a bit overkill. So if we were to dial it back to 1080p, it should stream fine. And it's really just a matter of finding a balance where you're happy. So as nice as 4K is, I'm not too sure if all of the footage is shot in 4K to start with. Not many studios around the world are actually shooting in 4K. A lot of them are still HD, because 4K is a huge outlay. We're talking new cameras, new mixers, new processing equipment, new transmission equipment. It's crazy expensive to get going in 4K. And I would say that if you were just going on HD, you'd still be getting the news as it was intended.
Gotcha. All right. 922 11882, the number if you'd like to have a chat to Ben Aylett. BenAylett.com is the website.
That's right.
Before we do anything else, let's have a chat to Carl Langdon, find out how the Brownlow medal count's going. Carl.
Seesawing contest now, Chris. It's down between two players, Steele Sidebottom and Tom Mitchell. We have had a few that were predicted to go pretty well, like Andrew Gaff, who, of course, is ineligible for the award, move up the leaderboard up to around 16 votes, Chris. But at the moment, as I bring it to you live, Tom Mitchell just got 3 votes in the last game. He played to move to 22 votes, 2 ahead of Steele Sidebottom. Nathan Fyfe, Andrew Gaff and Rory Laird are all on 16. And then we've got Sean Hilligans on 15. Another West Australian who was predicted to go pretty well, even though he finished in the bottom side, was Patrick Cripps. And up to this point, he is on 14 votes, along with the Melbourne ruckman Max Gawn.
Good on you, Carl. We'll catch up with you again very, very soon. We're getting to the pointy end, if you want to look at it this way, the business end of the count.
10 questions.
You might wonder how blind people deal with everyday challenges. Well, normally the answer is simple. We're not that different from you. We play music. We go to school. We go to work. You get the picture. But sometimes the simplest things can be difficult, and we need a pair of eyes.
Connect to.
First available helper.
That's where you come in.
Establishing video connection.
Through your smartphone, Be My Eyes connects the blind with sight.
On 882 6PR, this is Perth Tonight with Chris Ilsley.
And Ben Aylett's here talking technology, which he loves to do.
Absolutely.
Hey, mate, you talked about finding a bargain. How often do we find bargains like that?
Usually when we see a new model come out, the old models are put on the shelf and they try to get rid of them quickly.
Well, here's one. When something like a new phone comes out,
Yep.
how quickly and to what extent does the previous model drop in value?
With the new phones, it happens really fast, actually. So if you're looking at getting another Apple phone but you don't want to spend the earth, going for an iPhone 7 or iPhone 8 round about now would be a good idea because the iPhone's out.
What sort of savings are we talking about?
It does vary from one product to another, but we are talking, when you're talking about phones that cost $1,000 upwards, if you're buying it outright, you can save at least a couple of $100 in most cases. Yeah, it's really worth waiting and sort of picking the time when you choose to buy. Sometimes we don't get that luxury. Sometimes we just have to replace a phone when it dies.
Yeah.
But when we have that luxury of being able to wait and pull the trigger when the time is right, it really pays off.
Wow. So what you're saying is if you want to buy one model back or even two models back, you could save yourself a fortune.
Absolutely. And you're still getting a new device with the associated warranty, and it'll still work well.
I'm trying to work out how on earth is anyone going to pay somewhere between $1,600 and $2,000 for a phone?
Yeah, well, that's...
unless you're seriously rich.
Yeah.
Or religiously devoted, and I accept that there are people who fall into categories A and B above, but
and
seriously, for a lot of people, for the average person, mate, $2,000's a lot of money.
It's a fair whack. So that we're talking about the new iPhone XS Max something or other, and it's $2,300 Australian to buy it outright. Now, granted, not many people buy phones outright in Australia.
But even so, the plan would be loaded with that in taking that factor into account, though, wouldn't it?
The plan will have to somehow compensate for that sort of cost, and factor it in. So it is. Is it
worth it? I mean, let's be brutal. Let's take the whole fanboy Apple versus Android argument out of the debate.
Yeah.
Let's look at it purely and simply on its merits.
Yes.
How do we justify, and what does it have that justifies its price tag?
Okay, so the thing with the iPhone is that it's got a bigger battery, a faster processor, a beautiful screen. So I've got to say the screen has been one of the standouts when people talk about it. They've also say that the speakers have been a massive improvement. And the camera, of course, is another incremental step forward. Not as much wow as it has been in the past years as far as increases in performance goes.
Well, hang on, we're going to $2,300 here, mate. We want, damn it, I want wow factor. Where is it? Get it for me, please.
Yeah. Well, look, personally, I'm looking at the iPhone 10 series and... It just doesn't strike a chord for me at the moment.
And this bloke's an Apple fanboy.
Well, I like Apple stuff, but I also use Android and Windows and Linux.
Yeah, well, you do that because you have to. It's the nature of your job.
But I appreciate Apple for the quality product that they have. But this time round, the 10S is a half step between big releases. So you'll find that with the S of pretty much.
Well, if it's a big step, it's a big financial step between releases. So what happens when we have the big step between releases? It's going to cost us $3,000 or something.
I would be really surprised to see us hit the $3,000 mark with phones. But then again,
you would have been surprised to see $2,000, wouldn't you?
I would have been surprised $2,000 if you talked to me 2 years ago about what phones would cost.
Is there a risk? See, my theory is I don't think the late Steve Jobs would have allowed this to happen. I think he realised that what he had was an affordable product, that was a good product, that did everything that the consumer wanted and more.
Yeah.
And I sometimes wonder if Apple is losing a bit of that focus, not realising that how Jobs made it successful was he understood what people wanted and he gave it to them.
Yeah, I think Apple and a lot of other phone manufacturers as well, they're trying to get, they're hitting that high point in the market where they're charging at a certain amount, and we may see uptake sort of drop off a bit. So I really believe that we are hitting the higher levels of what people are willing to spend on getting a phone.
So I wonder how many people are prepared to spend that sort of money on a phone.
Yeah.
Look,
I know a few.
The fanboys will be. I know that.
Yep.
Right? There is the hardcore Apple brigade. They will spend the money on the phone. I have no doubt about that.
Yep.
But other people who might just simply be looking and they're pragmatically saying which phone does which. Yep. And if they come to the conclusion that a high-end Samsung is probably just as good as a high-end Apple, albeit in a slightly different way, they're not a fan of one over the other.
Yeah.
They're just simply looking at what's going to work best with them. Might come down to that.
Yeah, and it's really that big argument, fit for purpose and how much am I willing to spend on it? So that is a really big question people are facing, and also I'm sure Telstra and Optus have looked at this and they've spent a lot of time and effort trying to shoehorn a massive product like Apple is into a plan that's affordable, that they can say is acceptable for the market. It's going to be very interesting in the next couple of years to see how this all pans out. If we're going to see...
Is it possible, sorry to interrupt you there, mate, but is it possible that the company, that is Apple, have decided to do this with a view that the phone companies, obviously not only here but also overseas as well, will somehow pick up the slack? Do you think there's a little bit of defraying of costs to phone companies here?
Yeah, will phone companies take a hit on selling the Apple product in order to keep a subscriber?
Not if they can put somebody onto something else, they won't.
Well, yeah.
And that's a risk you take.
It is a risk you take because you are still dealing with a dedicated fan base, which is bizarre.
Yeah, well, that's fine. You know they're going to come along, don't you?
Yeah.
And the chances are also that your dedicated Apple fan base are probably buying their Apple phones from the Apple store anyway, because they're dedicated to the product.
Well, if they're dedicated enough to shell out all in one lump sum for the product, sure. Yeah, and that's not.
And so therefore, it may not be so much of a factor. You know, the average person rocking up through your Telstra or your Optus or your Vodafone store, they're not necessarily hardcore fans of anything. No, they're just simply signing on to whatever plan works for them.
Yeah, they're consumers just looking for a phone to get a job done. Yeah.
And so therefore, I'm just wondering if the phone companies can't put together one that's agreeable, or if they put together one which more or less reflects some of the costs they're facing, then it may be that inadvertently the competitor's product starts to look more attractive, and outside your hardcore Apple fanboys, you might have problems.
Yeah, absolutely. So you will see some downward pressure on the sales when it comes to meeting a certain budget. So this is why we're seeing the phones like Huawei and Oppo and ZTE and all those other phones that are very well suited for a budget end, and they still perform very well, and they do.
Well, okay, what's a Huawei cost? A high end, talk about your top end Huawei. What's that cost?
The top end Huawei's, you're still looking around the $1,000 mark, just over $1,000.
So half the price.
Half the price, yes.
Your top end Samsung.
Top end Samsung, they are creeping. I think at about $1,600 off the top of my head. Yeah.
So.
The Galaxy Notes are very expensive though, so they're getting close to the $2,000 mark.
So maybe it's not overpriced when you're looking at the high end. I mean, the Huawei you're saying probably stacks up just as well as the others, but it just simply doesn't have the name. Samsung and Apple have the name.
Yep.
Is there anything else that comes up? I mean, do we tend to see the Android versus Apple battle as a battle between the iPhone and the Samsung, or are there other phones that we tend to bring into the mix as well?
Well, the one phone that I'm really interested about this year is the Pixel 3.
That's a Google Pixel 3.
That's the Google Pixel 3. So that's the Google designed, Google built through Motorola, their own phone. So this is the closest thing you'll get to an Apple phone that runs Android. Okay, so this is the hardware is designed for the software, software is designed for the hardware.
So what's your gut feeling
fantastically. I'm hoping that the Pixel 3 does better than the Pixel 2 does, and I'd be surprised if it does better than the Pixel 1, because the first Pixel, when that came out, that is in my opinion, that is basically the best Android experience you can get on a phone, period.
Okay. 92211 if you'd like to have a chat to Ben. We're also going to find out about some, fake banking, but we'll get to that in a moment. Brownlow medal counts on. We're certainly getting to the pointy end of the evening, and the man with all the pointy end information is Carl Langdon.
I can tell you this, that we do know that Tom Mitchell has won the Brownlow medal because he has just got another vote to take him to 28 votes. Steel Side Bottom didn't, and he's on 20 votes, so he's 8 in arrears. We've only got 2 rounds of football to go, Chris Ilsley. So the 2018 Brownlow medalist is Tom Mitchell of the Hawthorn Football Club.
Oh, beautiful. Sometimes that's really handy. You get a result before they've even finished the count.
Yeah,
Carl?
well, there's 2 rounds to go. So he's on 28 votes. So obviously you only get 3 votes top. So only 6 can be earned in the next couple of games. And he might even get a couple more yet. Patrick Cripps has been a big mover late, Chris, the West Australian. He's up to 3rd place, currently on 18 votes. Maxie Gawn, the big ruckman at Melbourne, on 16. Rory Laird of Adelaide, and Whitfield and Nathan Fyfe also on 16 votes. But Tom Mitchell is the 2018 Brownlow medalist, Chris Ilsley.
Good on you, Carl. Thank you very much for that.
When we found Barrington, we just knew.
You might wonder how blind people deal with everyday challenges. Well, normally the answer is simple. We're not that different from you. We play music. We go to school. We go to work. You get the picture. But sometimes the simplest things can be difficult, and we need a pair of eyes.
Connect to.
First available helper.
That's where you come in.
Establishing video connection.
Through your smartphone, Be My Eyes connects the blind with sighted people through a live video connection. Simply choose if you need help or want to help by the click of a button.
That's a nice picture of you and your family, Caroline.
This is Perth Tonight with Chris Ilsley on 882 6PR.
Yes, indeed. Ben Aylett's here if you'd like to talk technology. Now, Ben,
Yes.
your headline, which, by the way, benaylett.com is a website. It's also where you'll find his contact information.
That's right.
And some really interesting articles, such as when Google serves fake banking.
That's right, yes. This is a really concerning thing we've seen in the past. It's just in the last couple of weeks it's come to light, and we've found out that there have been some fake banking apps hanging around in the Google Play Store for weeks, which is a big concern. And over 1,000 people have downloaded and used this application, and it's caused all sorts of problems where they've had their accounts compromised and funds taken out of their accounts. And it's actually a big change in the way that we view our safe app stores. I'm using air quotes here.
I think that Google needs a real good slap around over this one.
Okay, Google has dropped the ball, clearly. But it also illustrates that cybersecurity is a layered threat, meaning that you might have.
You know what I think needs to happen? It's going to have to happen on a world scale. We're going to have to start to make these companies legally liable for this, because it's look. The first thing is, don't tell me that a massive organisation, an international monolith like Google, can't sort fake apps from real apps, because it can.
Yeah.
But the only way you're going to make them do it is to say, well, if you don't do it and people get skimmed, you're the ones who are going to be held responsible.
Yeah, and I can't remember how this is all washed out.
Please don't tell me that they don't have the capability to stop them, because they do.
I'm not going to tell you that at all. They do have the capability to stop it, and they really should be stopping it, because, let's face it, this is their walled garden. They're the ones responsible for pulling out the weeds. And it's as simple as that. This is something that Google should have done in the first place. They haven't done it. People have got burned, and it is an issue. But it also highlights that the layered cybersecurity threat must also be met with a layered cybersecurity defence. So it's not enough just to blindly go and say, yes, everything in an app store is safe, and just willy-nilly click on everything. It's just the same with every other facet of our lives. We can't just dive in and assume everything's safe. We've got to stop and look. And there's a bit of caveat emptor.
But hang on. No,
I'm not blaming. No, I'm not blaming.
No, sorry. I've got to say.
Them.
No. I've just got to say, I don't buy the caveat emptor argument. Let the buyer beware. These people are facilitating these app stores. Okay. Now, if you went into a food retailer and they sold you bad food that gave you botulism, how would you react then if they said, caveat emptor, it's up to you to make sure the food was okay? Or do you have a reasonable expectation, save and except for the health regulations that already apply, would it also not be fair to say that you have a reasonable expectation that when you walk into that place, the food is indeed safe and fit for human consumption? I would argue the same principle applies here. We're talking about companies like Google. Right? We're not talking about 5 cents or nickel and dime companies, as the Americans would refer to them. We're talking about a huge international company, one of the biggest in the world.
Yes.
People have a reasonable expectation that if, for example, they go to download a banking app, that app is indeed genuine.
Yes.
And I don't think that caveat emptor should apply. In fact, I think that companies like that should be held liable.
Yeah. And look, with those apps, on closer inspection, if you'd looked at who made the app, it would not have said ANZ or CBA. So this is in particular the ANZ and CBA banking apps that have been duplicated or copycatted or whatever it is you want to call it. There are fake apps out there, and if you look at who it was made by, it does not say CBA or ANZ.
Well, the chances are that even their real apps are not made by them. They're made by third parties anyway.
But it's still got their name on it.
Well, these people can add
that's the
their
important thing. And then taking your supermarket caveat, supermarket argument, yeah, sure, the supermarket is responsible for serving food that is safe to eat. But if you were to go and pick up a...
So why isn't the app stores held liable for giving you apps that are safe to download?
Yeah, but if you go into a supermarket and you buy green eggs and ham, and I mean penicillin-laden green eggs and ham, you would not bag it and then take it home and eat it. You would pick it up and you'd either leave it to one side or you'd tell someone in the supermarket about it. And this is something that should happen. And
but you'd have a reasonable expectation. But you see, your green eggs and ham example is something you can see.
Exactly.
Right, the average person cannot see the fakeness in a lot of these apps. They appear to the average. Look, I get that people like yourself can, and we would expect that you can. It's a bit like a mechanic. You know, a mechanic can walk past your car and tell you 3 things you need to have adjusted. You know, they can hear it. Right. You're not going, what's he talking about? And he tells you.
Yeah.
This is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And you look at him, and how do you, I can hear it. Mate, can't you hear it?
Yeah.
And he can hear it screaming in his ears. He knows exactly what he's hearing. Just like when you look at some of these apps, straight away you know what you're seeing.
Yeah.
Right? Why? Because that's your stock in trade.
It is.
The average person, this is what people forget, the average person consuming these apps, they consume them if they're downloading the ANZ app or the CBA app, it's because they deal with those banks.
Yes.
That is their sole and whole reason for doing it.
Yep.
The idiosyncrasies of what goes into creating them, they don't care. All they do is they want to have that to link to their bank account.
And this is what the bad guys leverage over and over again. This is why 95% of all cybersecurity incidents are directly related to human interaction. It's unfortunately, cybersecurity is more about social engineering and tricking people than it is about the technology. These banking apps are not sophisticated. So these fake banking apps, they are not sophisticated at all. So it's really just as simple as putting up a form.
The average person doesn't. No, this is the point. This is why I'm saying the obligation to... See, the point is, my argument is that they shouldn't be allowed in the first place. That these companies have the technological wherewithal and plenty of people with your kind of ability to keep them out.
Yep.
And that's what they should be doing.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be saying to the customer, well, you should be able to recognise a fake app. No. Mr. Google, you shouldn't be letting fake apps into your store.
True. But my role in one of my clients' businesses is as the cybersecurity information officer. And I have managed to turn that 95% threat with just a little bit of training into my strongest asset when it comes to finding and reporting fraudulent emails. It's just a little bit of training, just showing people a couple of little tricks, and it turns that 95% threat into 95% asset or defense. And things like I've highlighted in my website, where if you want to be sure that you're getting the right app for something as critical as banking, you go to the bank website
and load it through there.
They have got the links on the website, on the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store, and you can be sure that.
Well, there's a safety net I'll build in straight away.
Exactly.
If you go to, why can't they do it in such a way where if you go to the App Store and you say, I want to download the ANZ app, the first thing it should do is come up with a message. If you wish to download this app, you need to first go through the ANZ website. Gives you no hot links, nothing like that, just simply says that. So you then have to load up and go to anz.com.au and load it through there. I mean, that's just a simple procedure. Yeah, I get that sometimes, and I understand that sometimes these things are a pain in the neck for the customer. But at some point, I think companies are going to have to say, yeah, it's a pain in the neck for the customer, but what we have to do is sell it to the customer on the basis of, in the long run, all we're doing is looking after your best interests.
That's right. And, you know, speaking of people adjusting to pains in the neck that becomes common knowledge now these days, 20 years ago, we wouldn't have worried about locking our front door, let alone arming the deadbolt and setting the alarm system. Nowadays, it's just second nature when it comes to driving your car. You put your seatbelt on without even thinking about it because it's safe. When you leave your car, you hit your central locking. You make sure it's locked. If you're paranoid like me, you check the door handle to make sure it's absolutely locked. These are things that were not common practice 20 years ago, and we have adjusted and evolved as consumers and users and operators where it is now second nature to us. This is something we
I'll
do.
give you an example. The Westpac Bank, when you logged in,
Yep.
you used your manual mouse to log in.
Mm-hmm.
They've now changed that to a keyboard system.
Yep.
The reason why they've done that, they've had half a dozen focus groups who've said, people don't like using the mouse system.
Yeah.
The mouse system, which could not be attacked by a keystroke logger, was far better.
Yeah.
So what they should have done is gone and sold it to people on the basis, well, we're actually doing this to protect you.
Yeah. I'd like to know who was in that focus group. How many people were actually...
Members of the public who just look at it and go, you know something, doing this is a pain in the neck. We want a simpler way.
Yeah.
Okay, they can come up with a simpler way, but it's not the best way.
Yeah.
Mate, this is a discussion for another day.
That's right. It's been a great chat, as always.
Always a great chat. And by the way, if you'd like to find out some more information, loads of contact information, plus, of course, these and other stories on Ben's website, which is just simply benaylett.com. We'll talk to you next week, mate.
Another quick success story about radio. A brand manager needed to promote a new source.